I'm Gregor Thompson, I'm a philosopher and a writer, and I know what the meaning of life is. Welcome to The Struggle. This episode is brought to you by The Struggle newsletter. This is a weekly email newsletter that I send out for free every Sunday, a short article concerning the art of embracing productive struggle. And I also send out tips, strategies, and recommendations such as movies, music, podcasts, books, and recipes to help along the way. To sign up completely for free, go to gregorthompson.com, the link will be in the show notes, confirm your subscription, and check your spam folder for your welcome newsletter, and then add me to your contacts so that you can continue to receive it in your inbox every week for free. And that's it. You're on your way to being more productive, healthy, and motivated. Now, let's get on with the struggle. This is episode 20 of The Struggle with me, Gregor Thompson. And this is a special one, as it's the first of many guest episodes in which I'll be speaking with all sorts of interesting people who have struggled to accomplish or achieve something meaningful, or anyone who can help you accomplish and achieve something meaningful. Basically, anyone who has struggled and overcome the hardships and suffering of life, and anyone who can help you struggle and overcome the hardships and suffering of your life, I want to speak to. These conversations will be much longer than the usual bite-sized episodes, usually a minimum of 1 hour. And so, for the first guest episode, I spoke with Dominic O'Meara, who has started an ethical social media company called Supernova, which donates from their advertising income to charities chosen by its users. You can expect to learn about how Dominic's career in advertising won him a BAFTA, how it led him to attempting to disrupt an incredibly monopolised industry, the issues with how we consume social media at the moment, and how we can use social media in a better, more ethical way. And also, just a quick aside, the audio quality does dip towards the end as my equipment decided to stop recording. But luckily, my backup audio worked, so you can still hear and watch the end of the conversation. But now, I bring you Dominic O'Meara. Right, Tom. So let's start linearly, and we'll start with you introducing yourself. What led you up to starting Supernova before we introduce Supernova itself?
Absolutely, my pleasure to. Hello, and great to see you again, Gregor, and to everybody listening. It's good to be on your podcast, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Dominic O'Meara. I'm the founder and the CEO of Supernova. And we are the social network for a positive world. We're the social network that gives back. What do you want me to, where can I go to next? What would be the most useful thing to tell you?
Let's go with what was your early career like? What is the journey that led you to just starting this brand of Supernova?
Well, I mean, I guess for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to work in media and entertainment. That's been the only thing that's really really captured my imagination. And I'm going back to, like I say, seriously, as long as I can remember, back to my earliest childhood. That is what I wanted to do. Movies caught my attention. TV shows, caught my eye, my attention, fueled my imagination, and it was always into an industry connected with that business that my destiny lay, and I was simply always going to work in a field that was connected with it, with that industry. And the field that I began with by about the age of 15, I had decided that advertising was perhaps the best place for me to point my attentions, because although I'd thought of other fields, advertising was the one that had the most parental endorsement, really. In a way, advertising was a clearer thing to get into, and it was one where your career path was a bit easier in terms of, it was little bit more mapped out, let's say. And being a commercial, a clearly very commercial in name and in everything else, occupation, it was one that my parents could get behind because they could see how that could make I could make a living doing it. Other things that I'd suggested or I'd thought about were things that they found it harder to imagine how that you could ever make a living doing it. So advertising seemed to be the one that they signaled their approval for. And I guess I wanted to have parental approval for whatever crazy dreams I had. And so that's that started to fill my I started to fill my head with designs on getting into advertising. And so off I went and I did a business degree and I applied to ad agencies while I was doing it, and I was very lucky. I got a job with Saatchi and Saatchi as a graduate, finishing my business degree, and I began my career at the age of 22 in advertising, working on McDonald's and what is now Roundtree's, and also some government account for what was called the Youth Training Scheme. And I started working on commercials, and I just instantly loved it. I loved the fact that it was the experience I had of doing this was exactly what I'd hoped it would be. I was getting to work with very creative people in a very commercially driven environment. So it wasn't, you could see why it was, how it was all adding up. You could see why it was a business. It wasn't one of these things that had there was some kind of strange mystique to it. Clearly, there was a desire from the companies that we were, creating ads for to create something that would cut through, reach a lot of people, and persuade them to buy their products. And we were using, techniques, and we were using the skills of the entertainment industry to do that. We'd come up with a script for a TV commercial, and we'd go to a commercials director who might very easily also be a feature film director, or at least someone that was about to go off and become one, to create commercials that were of an increasingly high standard. And anyway, that career path went through all the way. I worked for some other big agencies, and I guess in a way this particular section of the journey culminated in many ways with making a very big commercial with George Lucas Industrial Light and Magic Company. It was a very big commercial with a huge budget that reached over 1 billion people, and it won a host of awards, including a BAFTA. It's quite unusual in winning it was quite unusual to have BAFTAs for advertising. I even think there was only one cohort that got them, and this commercial happened to be amongst them. And so that was all really, really exciting and just a great experience, seeing how you could get in front of large numbers of people and start to entertain them, because the commercials that we made were judged to be some of the most entertaining stuff on TV. So I really loved that era. So then I began my own agency, my own ad agency in Amsterdam, because by now I guess I really, really wanted to have my own practice, if you like. I wanted to start making my own content, my own commercials for clients directly. So I did. My agency, I started an ad agency called Community in Amsterdam, from my front room in my apartment, and we were successful instantly. We were profitable from day one. And within a year, we had, I don't know, 10, 15 people in an office in Amsterdam, and clients that included Canon and Adidas and TomTom, Philips. We did very well. And that evolved over about a 4-year period in Amsterdam. I moved back to the UK around about then. I'd married my wife, who's British, incidentally, but I'd married her, in Amsterdam. We'd been now in Amsterdam for about 10 years. We had another child on the way. We moved back to the UK. And it was at about this time that social media, which had been around for a while, I mean, it had been around since I'd started my agency, as a matter of fact, but it was at about this time when I moved back to the UK that social media was really coming into its stride, and it was just very clear to me that it was on its way to replacing a lot of, or changing anyway, very fundamentally, a lot of the kind of accepted practices in advertising that had come about. It was the advent of user-generated content was starting to make it seemed to me a lot of the functions of particularly a small and independent ad agency, it was starting to make them somewhat redundant because brands were even then, and of course they've done so more and more, but even then brands are starting to turn to what we now call influencers to create content for them. So less of a need to go and shoot a commercial. They were trying to do so in a way that would get people to look at that content without needing to pay for advertising slots. So viral, the creation of viral content kind of became the holy grail. It was where any brand advertiser really wanted to be, provided they could do something that would be, acceptable for their own brand values. I mean, there were limits to what they were prepared to give up, but that was nonetheless a very strong desire amongst them. So I saw that social media was starting to become quite a force, and I'm a creatively driven businessman. As I say, from my childhood, always wanting to be in media and entertainment, but wanting to make a living doing so. And I saw this thing, social media, as an enormous creative opportunity to share positivity and and wealth, because these social networks wasn't like starting a TV station. They didn't have to employ lots of actors to make programs. They didn't have to employ lots of cameramen to film it. They just created a platform and got people on it. So it seemed to me that that there would have to be quite a lot of money flowing into them from advertising sales that was then not being needed to create content to draw people onto the platform in the first place. So I felt, well, look, there's a lot of wealth here that's not really being shared. So there's a great opportunity to share the positivity that is, that's in all of us, and the wealth, and make people feel good by doing good. This is what occurred to me. And I actually thought, well, that's bound to be what they're going to do. I mean, it's so obvious that that's what you would do to me, that I guess that's just exactly what they're going to do. Nonetheless, I didn't feel that was a boat that I'd missed. I just thought, well, this is something I'd like to get involved. I'm an entrepreneur by nature, and I just thought, well, I'd like to get involved in that. And we started by creating a little network actually within community. And the idea was that you would use, I'll tell you very briefly about this. The idea is that you'd use QR codes, scan the QR code, and then go to a mobile ready site where advertisers' products were shown. And then and you'd also be encouraged to post your own content. And we ran ads on this. And it was kind of like an experiment. It was something that was on the side. And what we found was that what we wanted to do was share the wealth with the people that viewed the ads. That was our first idea. And we found that it was relatively popular, but there was a problem, and that was that you got a lot of spammy content on there. And advertisers don't really want to be involved in an environment where there's spammy content. It's just a bad experience for everybody. So the other thing is that when sharing the advertising revenue with the content creators, and it's a very nice thing to do. It sounds like a very democratic thing to do, but you're not talking about very much money realistically. I mean, Facebook, Meta make a lot of money all rolled up together. Annually they make billions, but they have billions of users, and each individual user is probably generating no more than I think the figure's about $40 annually. So even if you shared it 50-50, that would be $20 per user. So it would be, you know, a little bit less than $2 a month. And to some, people that are poorer and that need money, that's quite a decent amount of money. Um, but the problem comes when you look at the bigger economic model, because advertisers don't tend to want to advertise to people that don't have a lot of money, if I'm really honest with you, because they need people to have money to buy the products in the first place. So that system is, it seems to me, economically flawed. The concept, the idea of giving people that need help money is a really good one, but you need to do so from a sustainable basis. And so, what advertisers do like is advertising to people who have, they don't have to be rich, but just have enough money to be able to buy the products in the first place, to be slightly more affluent than someone that's in need of $2 extra, a month. And if you have that sort of audience, then advertisers are going to be more inclined to use the platform. And if they're more inclined to use the platform, you can then divert that income into good causes and charities and do so collectively. And that is what drew me to come up with the idea of Supernova, because I saw that our initial experiment that I've just described to you, where we shared revenue with the people that viewed ads, um, we saw that there was some popularity for that, definitely, but the model was unsustainable. And I thought, well, look, rather than that, why don't we make it all about giving money to charities and involve everybody using the platform in that decision and decide who should be the beneficiary of a collective amount of money that we give from our advertising revenue. So it's going to cost the user no money. And while we're at it, why don't we give this product a really positive name? And the brightest thing in the universe that there is a supernova. So we decided to call it Supernova, the social network for a positive world, and to create a system to design the product so that just by using the app, you would instantly benefit a cause of your choice. And that's when we came up with the very unique product design that Supernova has, which differentiates it very fundamentally from all other social networks. Because what's the kind of fundamental principles on Supernova is that likes earn money for charities. And the more likes that your posts get, the more more money you earn for the cause of your choice. And that's because you select a cause, you select one of 8 causal areas when you sign up. You can change at any time, but you can only support one cause at a time. And from that point on, you're working, you're using the network with that cause in mind. You're supporting your cause all the time. If you put a post up and people like it, more of the advertising revenue that we get in goes to that cause. If you're scrolling or using the app, you don't have to post. You're earning karma points, which is getting you closer to being able to give a supernova. And when you've got 100% karma, you can give a supernova. And when you do, that is like a 10 times boost for the person that's posted the post you give a supernova to. And that will earn them, their charity, the cause they're supporting, 10 times the votes. Because a like is like a vote on Supernova for a share of the action fund. So in that regard, all the time you're using the app, you are helping good things to happen, whether it's for your cause or somebody else's cause. It's not just about the content and the sort of narcissism of whether you get liked or your post gets liked more than somebody else's, which is one of the things that can lead to a lot of negativity and self-comparison. You're never in that situation because you are with a cause all the time, so you're never alone. And there are a number of factors that we've designed into the product experience that make it very, very different from any other social network, and that result in people just simply feeling good on the supernova. And that's what we're very keen to develop much further now, to get into. But what we've learned in the last year or so, anecdotally, is that people just feel good using supernova. Nobody comes to supernova and leaves feeling a bit bad about themselves, you know. Not that I've ever heard. I mean, you get a lot of anecdotal comments on there from users, expressing the positivity they felt. But I've never seen anybody say that it's made them feel anything less than good. And that we feel is the opportunity within social media, is to make people feel good, and share the wealth, and share the love, really. And we feel that opportunity has been missed so far. Supernova's here to solve two major global problems associated with social media. That of deteriorating mental health, or sorry, not deteriorate, but I mean, a threat to mental health that comes from using social media. And I've actually just been listening to a podcast series myself on BBC BBC iPlayer, I believe. An excellent podcast series. I'm just looking at the name. Yeah, called The Gatekeepers. Called The Gatekeepers. Hope you don't mind me referencing another podcast series on here, but anyway, not called The Gatekeepers. And some great stories in there. On insights in there, really, about the design of some of the other social networks and how they're designed to keep you scrolling and be sticky and be addictive. Well, we absolutely do not have that objective on Supernova. There is no algorithm on Supernova that will send you floods of content. If you so much as think about going swimming, we won't send you a gazillion posts about swimming and swimming trunks and ads for swimming trunks. We don't do that. We don't do that for a collection of reasons. The first one is I find it actually intensely patronizing that we should think that just because you think one thing once, you want to be plagued forever about the same thing. It's as if we imagine you've got no, it's as if we think you've got no imagination. So that's the first one. Just on a basic human level, we think it's like, an affront to the individual. And the second is that we have an objective that you should stay stuck on Supernova for as long as we're about. We don't think that our advertisers are best served by a platform that sees their audience in that way, and we don't think that the values that would attract to their brands are necessarily as positive as they will be in a situation where the audience feels good about themselves because they're doing good. We think that's of greater value. It may not be of such enormous volume as you will get from another social network, but we feel that that boat has sailed, because when some of those social networks can reach 3 billion people at a time, that's an awful lot of people to ever dream about reaching. So we feel we're going to leave volume to those that understand volume really well. And we're going to concentrate on value, which is going to be about quality rather than quantity of engagements. We feel that's still a significant, niche, if you wish, or gap in the market to fill, partly because absolutely no one is even attempting to fill it, that I'm aware of. We are, and we'll do so. So the two major global problems, the first being, threats to mental health, which we've seen, statistically supported, too many times. I think it's, Forbes, I think it is, that did a report that said that, well, I think we can see with our own eyes that around 100%, all of Gen Zs, that's 98%, I think, but all of Gen Zs effectively use social media, particularly in the West. And, Forbes will tell us that 1 in 2 of those would say to you they feel sad, anxious, or depressed when they do. We think that's a pretty terrifying statistic, especially when Gen Z is the largest and most diverse generation in the history of the United States of America. We think that's pretty scary that so many of them are feeling this sort of negativity when they use social media, which they do, to many hours, to huge quantity every day. It's the first problem. The second problem is global wealth imbalance, because we just think there's a great opportunity here to share the wealth in advertising more democratically and more creatively. To put some numbers on it, the wealth in social media, sorry. The wealth in social media is significant. The advertising money that's flowing through the hands of social networks amounts to around £200 billion annually. And the founders of these are numbers from Statista, with which I'm familiar. This is what I've read. The top 10 founders of social networks, of the top 10 social networks, have a combined personal wealth of £200 billion. It's a coincidental figure. As a matter of fact, I think that's even being quite modest in this report, because as far as I know, just one of those individuals is worth at least £200 billion as an individual. So, I think we're going to find Statista's numbers are a bit on the conservative side. But nonetheless, let's imagine it was only 200 billion between those top 10 founders of the world's top 10 social networks. And at the same time, and that's 5 billion people using those top 10 social networks, at the same time, on the other side of the coin, and actually pretty much from the other side of the world, geographically, 5 billion of the world's population, that's 62% of the world's population, live on under £10 a day. Those are not the same 5 billion that are making those founders so wealthy, but a lot of them will be the same. There'll be a big crossover on the Venn diagram. And so you're talking about a very large number of people that are using social media that are not really seeing any benefit at all financially from it. And that's what our model solves. That would not be solved by sharing money with the individuals that look at ads, if you heard my earlier logic. Instead, those people that live very largely in very poor conditions in very poor countries can be helped by the charities that we send money to. Because if you choose human rights on Supernova, then the money that goes into the human rights causal area is then shared with charities in that causal area, and that includes Oxfam, Save the Children, UNICEF, and those are charities that will distribute the money then, or the funds, and use the funds to help people in poorer countries, those people that are living on £10 a day or less. And that's how our model works. So our fundamental product design is very different from the major social networks. There's no algorithm, and you're rewarded for better behavior, through the fact that you're doing good. It's visibly brought to life through the karma bar. And when you give a supernova, there's an animated supernova kind of love bomb. So, we've made it kind of fun. We're like Fleetwood Mac in that way. We try to make love in fun. We don't turn it into a big soul searching think tankathon of a thing. It's just something we're just saying to people, look, do what you're going to do anyway on social media, but just do it in a positive spirit, and come and do it on Supernova, because when you do, you're going to help other people and you're going to feel really good about that. So I'd say really anyone listening to this, I hope you start to use Supernova. If you use social media, come and try Supernova. It's a beta product, so you're not going to find all the bells and whistles that you find on other social networks just yet, but you're going to be starting something truly new and different, helping to start something truly new and different within social media. That, I hope, would be a big motive. And if you ask your friends to join, that'd be amazing too, because we want to know what you think. We want to hear what you think about the experience. As we improve it, we want to know what changes you'd like to see and how you'd like us to make it better. Anyway, that, Gregor, I hope answers your question of how I came to start Supernova in the first place, and why we do what we do with it.
It does indeed. It even answered the next question I had, which is describing Supernova. But staying on the topic of Supernova's users, one of the things I was thinking about is, I suppose a cynic might say that every kind of social media app will have the potential to breed negativity or to for some people to use it for negative intentions. But one way that I would answer that with regards to Supernova is that its users are the answer to that, because the type of people that would use an ethical social media app that does good aren't the type of people that would use it for negative intentions. So if anyone's questioning whether to use Supernova or thinking cynically about Supernova, that seems to be the answer for me, is that the user base is completely different to every other social media app, because it's a more narrowed down group of positive thinking and positive intentioned people.
It absolutely seems to be that way, Gregor. I was not expecting that to prove to be the case, but so it has proven as we've gotten, more users on board over the course of the last year or two. Yeah, it seems to be what, one of the things that I thought would make a difference, but, I'm not sure it was terribly widely shared, but does seem to have made a difference, is we tell people to behave nicely. We say to them, we have a charter on the site, and we make it pretty abundantly clear that, antagonism, rudeness, bad behavior, we've got a charter that spells out what we mean by this, just isn't tolerated. It's taken down. So if you go to Supernova, you won't really find any toxicity because it's all been removed before you get there. And we don't have a labyrinthine, laborious, process where you've got to report somebody and then, umpteen different people have a look at it, and then if they nor so maybe it'll get taken down, maybe it won't. Nor do we have a policy of dissociation where we don't agree with that because we want everybody to put up whatever they fancy. They're just allowed to do it, and we just turn a blind eye. We have a very specific pledge. It's in the charter that we've published, and we mean it very sincerely and we mean it very deeply. We own the issue of your sense of well-being on our platform. We don't try and make it somebody else's issue. We don't try and pretend that it's not really our fault, or cite regulation 203 or whatever it is from the we don't do any of that, trying to wriggle out of it. We think that if we're going to make a difference and say we're going to make a difference, we should make a difference, and that's what we're here to. We see that as the creative opportunity. Anyway, that's what we do. And yeah, you're right. It looks like if you actually give people a sense of the terms of engagement, the sort of house rules, before they step through the door, then they kind of know what the drill is and they get on with it a bit. And they don't come to Supernova looking to create a new toxic environment. They leave other toxic environments to try and be part of something that's new and fresh. Of course, you're going to get the occasional person that wants to come in and cause a rumpus. You get the occasional drunk going into a coffee shop, don't you? You can't help that. We just remove them very quickly. That's all. We just remove them quickly, efficiently, and relatively noiselessly. And that's what we do. And there's only so much fun you can have being, bounced from, from the network before you just find something better to do with your time, I suppose. Anyway, you could come onto Supernova and try and cause havoc, but nobody will see you because, you only see content that from people that you're following or from content that we've put into Explore. And we're not going to put your content into Explore if it's not suitable. So, yeah. So no, it's just not a place to either. You won't be affected by horrible stuff on Supernova, and most people people that come to Supernova don't want to create that kind of environment anyway. Mm-hmm. There's no fun in it. There's no gain in it.
Mm-hmm. I think what else sets Supernova apart is, well, some people might think that the social media space is a very crowded, a very monopolized space already, but one thing I think with Supernova is that it has its niche. Like Twitter or X now has its niche of being the kind of the Wild West, the kind of the social media apps where anything goes. Supernova has its niche of being the positive social media network.
I think that's right. I don't. I'm not sure that I. Do you know what I look at other markets. You know, I've been around the world for a while now, and I couldn't possibly. I can't agree that it's crowded. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very thinly represented, but monopolistically so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, what have you got really? You've got. I can't. I'm not going to take the risk of naming names, but you've probably got about eight biggies. I would think you'd have to struggle to do that. You could probably sort of like get four or five social networks. I mean, come on. There's like 5 billion people using social media. How many TV stations could you name? Hundreds. TV, newspaper titles. Even different contending news shows on TV, on the different channels. Um, and different genres of types of media channel in pretty much every field other than social media, really, and one or two others. Search is another. There's too much market dominance from too few tech companies who all are centered in the same part of the world. So I I can only imagine that a future generation of governance will have the sense, the wisdom, and the resolve to stop this because it can't be good for us. It can't be good for us that we're all pouring so much of our attention, time, and being so reliant on such a tiny number of producers. Obviously, our best interests, cannot be represented by people who are financially motivated to manipulate and exploit our behavior because they will do that and it will happen. So no, I don't think it's crowded. Quite the contrary, but it's definitely very competitive, because it's difficult competing with companies that are not regulated and operate in a near monopoly situation. Yeah, that's tricky. I don't dispute it, but I do think you're right though that the way to overcome this is the way that others before us have found their way in markets because it's not a completely new thing. This concept of monopoly or at least highly restricted competition. It's not a particularly new thing, and this has been around since the dawn of time. And the way to do it is to find your niche, as you just said, is to find a niche and to be good in that niche. And we found it. You know, these other guys don't really want to be very good at being positive or sharing. Well, they're not. That's not their thing. They haven't got where they've gotten to by doing that. They've got to where they've gotten to by being very, very astute commercially and good at getting people to stick on their app through technical evolution and and development. And that's what they'll carry on doing, I guess. Something like that. And they've now got a large body of shareholders who, I guess, will want the share price to stay high. And so the formula that they've hit upon is not one that anybody's going to want them to change in a hurry. I wouldn't have thought. We don't have that. I mean, one of our strongest assets really is that we have a blank sheet of paper, blank canvas. We haven't created a situation for ourselves, an environment for ourselves that that we're now kind of like bound into. So we're kind of free to develop some new rules, and amongst them we have the rule that people should be kind and nice and fun with each other. How about that? And we have the rule that we should share some of this fantastic wealth that goes with getting this right with causes that can help people that need it and the planet that needs it. So those are our rules. We also actually want to keep people off social media as much as we think this the amount of time, the reports that we see of the amount of time that particularly younger people spend, everybody really spends on social media. It's too much, and it's partly this algorithmic um, technique that's going on that keeps them in these rabbit holes. We don't want people to be there. We don't think that's good for society, actually. Bond and communicate and form networks. Yes, we think that's great, but we'd like to be a conduit to get them then into each other's experiences in real life. That's what you'll see us doing more of. And we think that coming up with this set of rules will actually not be a commercial mistake. We think it'll be a commercially smart thing to do because, yeah, there's already quite enough people doing the opposite. So we think that filling this niche um, with a very rich experience, which is different in every way possible from what already exists, that's the smart thing to do, we think, because that will grow out the niche. And it doesn't look like we're going to get any help anytime soon from any kind of governmental action in terms of restricting the size to which these existing companies can get. Nobody seems remotely interested in doing that. They seem, perfectly happy to make sure that other companies, supermarkets can't get together, whatever you name it. They seem very happy to sort of like block those sort of decisions. But when it comes to tech companies growing to extraordinary sizes, that seems to be left alone. So anyway, so we have to come up with a solution on our own, and we're happy enough to do that. So that's what we're doing.
Mm. And in terms of growth, so we were saying before we started recording, that the last time you spoke was probably over 3 years ago. That was on my previous podcast, which you can still, anyone watching or listening, you can still watch or listen to on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. So in those 3 years, what's happened with Supernova? What's the user base like? Is it grown? And also, how much money have you raised as well?
Well, I mean, our user base has gone up 7 or 8 times, I guess. 7 or 8, yeah, in that period. We've done, and that's all been organic. So we have not yet started to do any, committed marketing to get the name out there. It's all come through things like this podcast, and other organic interest that there has been just in the market, in the press, for what we're doing. So that's number one. So yeah, quite very good uptake. Our more important to us than absolute numbers, though, although that is very positive. But much more important to us is the retention, the way is people coming back. We consider that at this moment, we consider that at this stage to be a bigger measure of whether we're pointing in the right direction. And recently, our engagement has started to increase significantly. And we put that down to a shift in the way that we're introducing the product. And it is marketing in a way, it's just that we're not doing any active paid for marketing. It's the way in which we're introducing the product to new markets. And we're doing so in a way that encourages people to come on with their friends. Because what we've learned is that the number one reason for, and this is supported by data that's out there, but we've seen the difference that it makes to approach our product market fit in this way. The number one reason for people to use a social network is to network socially. They want to see what their friends are doing. They want to see what their friends and people that they know are doing more than anything else. Because the definition of good content is a highly subjective thing. But one factor that most people would agree with is they like to see what their friends are doing, and they like to see what people they know are doing. So, a picture of a cup of coffee on your table is going to be more interesting to your friends than my cup of coffee on my table. So introducing Supernova into concentrated groups of people in one in one move is producing very good results in terms of our retention. So we're doing more of that now, and that is showing some significant and dramatic improvements for us. And we're going to keep doing that, and that is what's going to push our numbers up. Because by definition, if you don't lose the people, because you can get them to download the app, but then the question is, are they going to use it? If they don't, then look, you've clocked up another user on your download thing, but it doesn't really mean anything. Not really, it doesn't. What matters is how many people that download the app then use it. Because if they use it, well, not only do you get the benefit as a business of them using the app, but there's a much stronger likelihood they're going to tell someone else about it because it's got their content on it and because there's something about the app that they like. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming back. So that's the one that you want to look at, really. That particular metric, and as I say, that for us has improved significantly of late. So that's a development for us, and that's what we're drilling into now as we look for the next phase. We want to keep our retention scores as high as they are and get them higher. And we've got new partners coming on board that are brand partners that are with us going to be exploring what it is. Because what we're very interested in is the fact we've heard this back a lot anecdotally, that people do feel good when they use Supernova. So we want to explore more and understand better why they do, so that we can give them more of it. And we have brand partners that are coming on board who want to get more involved in that as well. So these are the sort of things that are going to be driving our next phase of development. Increasingly good retention, giving users more of what they want and more of what they've already signaled to us they enjoy, and bringing in brand partners that can benefit from this as well, because they also want to be part of a new era in social media. And that's not to criticize the players that are already there and that have done very well in it. It's not to criticize them at all for what they do or the way they do things. We just, I don't think the world needs another one of them. That's all. There's already enough to be going on with. So we're bringing something very, very, very different. The one thing that's similar is that you can use it to do social media in just the same way. You can share your images, you can get involved and comment and all of the stuff you can normally do on the others. But with this, there's a very different twist to it, which is it's about positivity. It's about doing good and feeling good, unashamedly so. Others might be there to represent contention, a place to air your views, to have a bit of a squabble if that's what you want. And you mentioned X earlier. I guess they've become famous for that. But we're at the diametrically opposite end of the scale from them, really. Yeah.
And let's maybe move out with social media and into, so you as a person, you're doing something now that's extremely ambitious and also extremely meaningful. And I mean, you could have stuck with advertising. You were clearly extremely good at it. You're extremely successful at it. You could have stuck with it. So why move into something that's so ambitious? Why embrace that struggle?
Because I felt it needed to be done, and because I feel it needs to be done, and that remarkably, I've got more or less, as far as I can see it, the necessary set of skills and experiences to do it. And I genuinely feel it must happen and it must be done. And I'm alive at a time when I can do it. So, I have, timing. I have motive because it's in this area of media and entertainment, which, as I've told you, from childhood has meant the world to me. I did succeed. I did do well in advertising. It's true, but you're only alive for so long. And I wanted to move on to something else where I could make a really significant difference. And I believe, with everything I've learned, with everything that consumes me with interest and with passion, as the word is used, I wanted to bring all that together somewhere that would really make a very significant change, I suppose, and positive difference to the world that I'm part of. And I found myself in the fortunate position, I had, made some money in advertising, and I was able to reinvest that in this together with other investors that have joined. And I, like I say, I just feel it needs to be done. It's got to be done. And I feel very blessed to be in a position with the people that have joined me as part of the team and that are continuing to join them that will join us in future too. I feel very blessed to be in a position to do it. I think, yeah, it's a struggle, but I'm very fortunate, I think, to be placed uh, to continue that and to come through that struggle and to succeed in it, which I shall do. So I guess I hope that answers the question. That's kind of why. So a feeling of a little some feeling partly a feeling of obligation, because I feel it just has to be done. Partly a feeling of you know, self-assurance because I believe I can do it and I want to do it, and just the desire, to bring something that I feel is so needed to an area that means a lot to me. Media and entertainment means a great, great deal to me. And this massive creative opportunity is too good to be missed, I think. That's why.
So usually I would end a podcast on something positive, something optimistic. Um, but I mean, this whole conversation has been very positive and optimistic. But
Good.
let's go with, what advice would you give to a young person who's either just left high school, just left university, who is ambitious, wants to do something meaningful, and
Mm.
wants to do something that's going to be hard, but that
Yeah.
they're thinking about?
Well, I think if I trace back, if I assemble my own little list of ingredients there, I would say number one, zero in on something that just for whatever reason it is absolutely captures your imagination, that you just love doing, that you could do for hours and hours and hours on end, and it would never ever feel like a chore or a bore, or that you were doing a job. And for me, that's pretty much anything to do with media entertainment. But whatever it is, try and identify it within your own palette of taste. So that's number one. Just find something that you just really, really, really enjoy doing. Just zero in on what it is, start to get as much experience of it as you possibly can, and to get to know as many people in it as you possibly can, because everything's run by people. Everything. I know they've created, they're going to create robots that'll create robots that'll create robots. I've no doubt it's terribly clever and there's probably no end to it, but it's a person somewhere that created it. And until we're advised, and it's proven to us differently, because hypes are incredible things. Until it's categorically proven to us otherwise, it's still about people. So get to know people, and try and build as many friendships as you can with them, because people will get you through things in the end, and they'll introduce things and other people to you. So network, yeah, and do so sincerely, with people that try and make it a two-way street. So um, you know, see what you can bring to the party, as well as enjoy it when you get there. And then having identified, get some experience. If you're a young person, you're coming into something, you've identified something that you really, really love doing. You're starting to get to know people. Get some actual experience of whatever this subject or this field is. Know your stuff. It will save you a lot of time and money. Um, as you come to actually, if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I guess you're asking this question from the point of view of an entrepreneur that's going to start their own thing. So as you go into the entrepreneurial phase, it really will help you to know your way around whatever industry or business it is that you're starting out. And then the last, I think those are the three of the kind of key things. But the last one is the biggest one. Never, ever, ever, ever give up on whatever it is you started out doing, ever, because that's the real big difference, I think, between in the end. The advertising one, you're right. I could have stayed with that. And that company I started was successful instantly. And boy, did that feel good. I got to tell you, it always felt like incredibly hard work. It never felt easy to me. Always felt like a struggle. But what I never had to do was it was profitable from day one. This has been a much bigger deal. It is considerably more ambitious, as you say, but it has such a strong sense of purpose about it. You know, such a strong sense of what a great thing to do this is. So it's tremendously motivating. So I'm very fortunate in that way that I'm continuously motivated to get through whatever the next, section of broken glass I have to crawl across, or whatever I have to do. I'm determined to do it and keep on doing it, and with my team to deliver it because of that desire, because of that sense of purpose and direction. So that's the real difference between this and the ad agency. This is about fulfilling an obligation I feel, actually, now, to everyone that's invested in me and that believes in me, and to the fact that I can see it's jolly well necessary. I've got Gen Z kids of my own, and as I was listening to that podcast series, I was hearing some just really terrible stories of what's happened. It's got to change, hasn't it? It's got to be dealt with, and I know I can do it, so I'm doing it.
Well, that sounds like a good place to end. Dominic, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Anyone that's listening or watching, if you're bored of social media, if you're annoyed at feeling terrible when you're using all the other social media apps, get on Supernova. Join us, because I'm posting on there almost every day, and I know you're posting there a lot. So join us there. And thank you for taking the time.
Absolute pleasure. Great to see you again, of course, Gregor, and thank you very much indeed for asking me on today. And it's been wonderful to talk to you. And thank you very much to everyone listening. As Gregor says, we welcome you very much on Supernova. It's a beta product, so come and have a look and tell us what you think, and we'll take your opinions, take your thoughts on board, and we'll keep making improvements together. So thank you very much indeed.
Just a few more things before you take off. Firstly, thank you for watching. It genuinely means a lot to see people viewing and liking the content. Second, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe. It's the best way you can support the podcast. As you can probably tell, I don't have a team behind me helping with recording or editing the podcast. I don't have much fancy equipment, and I don't have much financial resources to keep the podcast going. So any support, any subscriber is helping the podcast grow and helping me more than you know. You can stay up to date with everything I'm doing on social media. All of the links will be in the show notes. And you can also listen to the Struggle podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And lastly, keep on struggling.